employs another helper. And that we will label tonight as the beast from the earth, or better known later in Revelation as the false prophet. Earlier in chapter 13, we learned that, as we said, the dragon uses governments of the nations to persecute the church. Certainly you see that in China today. Sometimes it's real obvious. Other times it's more subtle. It just becomes a philosophy that exists in the world that basically will help me out with that one. Pluralism. And as long as you don't narrow your beliefs down and say, like, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. If you start down a road like that, then they're going to want to cancel you. We can see that clearly in our own. Can we not see that today? As crazy as it seems, you'd think that 9/11 didn't even happen, because if you go on most comedy shows or even news broadcasts and you say something derogatory about Jesus Christ and Christianity, they'll hold their bellies bent over and laugh, and it'll just be high fives all around. Say something about Muhammad, and see how fast you lose your television program and everything. Now, that can't be by accident. And it's really bizarre when you realize that Islamic terrorists attacked us in 9/11. And it's just like that's went clear over our head, and now we've got a soft pedal, all of that. That's deeper than just people's confusion. It's deeper than somebody embracing or being so smart that they see things at a higher level. It's wisdom that comes from the earth. Okay? There are two types of wisdom. James says there's wisdom that comes from above. The wisdom that comes from above is pure and peaceable, and etc., etc. But he says there's a wisdom that comes from the earth, and it's sensual, and it's demonic, it's devilish. Okay? That philosophy, and it finds its way certainly into religion, but that whole philosophy that tries to attack the people of God is this labeled, the picture of it here is the beast from the earth. It is a part of the unholy Trinity. We know the Trinity in the Bible is the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Well, the book of Revelation gives us the unholy Trinity. That's the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. The devil is always trying to imitate or give an alternative to God. So the beast of the earth symbolizes false religion and false philosophy that the dragon uses to hinder the church and to deceive people throughout the church age. So when Jesus was saying before he left, but while he was still teaching, and then of course he was teaching about the last days, we have to put that into context. For Jesus and for the apostles, they had a different message of the last days than most of the TV evangelists have. Okay? For Jesus and the apostles, the last days began when Jesus came to earth. Okay? Even Peter's first message on the day of Pentecost was that these are the last days. It was promised that in the last days I would pour out my Spirit upon all flesh. Are we in the last days? Yes, we have been ever since Jesus came. These are the last days. And throughout this entire period, he was showing us that we can view the world with some insight. That we should not expect Christianity to somehow take over the earth. It's not going to happen. Some people preach that we're going to preach everybody into the kingdom, and then when Jesus comes, we just hand the kingdom over to him. That's not in the Bible. In fact, Jesus said the kingdom of God is like a man that sows seed in a field, and he says an enemy comes in and sows tares among the wheat. And here's what Jesus' sermon is there. Let both grow together. Both will grow together throughout the entire age of the church age. So the entire age of the church, from the time that Jesus ascended until He comes again, we will have the conflict of hostility from people in power, whether it's a government person or it could just be a boss on a job. There will be hostility against God's true people that way. And there will be this crazy philosophy that is always trying to draw people away from the truth. There will be false prophets. Jesus said there will be false prophets. And He said, you know what they will look like? They will look like sheep. Or they will look like a lamb, but there'll be wolves in lamb's clothing. This one here that we probably should read the text tonight before we go too much further. In Revelation 13 has that appearance. Now, the first one comes, it's pretty obvious. It's a grotesque beast. Right? But this second one, beginning in verse 11, He said, I saw another beast come up out of the earth. It had 2 horns like those of a lamb. What? This thing looks like a lamb. Now, all throughout this book, we've heard about the lamb, have we not? It's Jesus. This thing is giving you an appearance that it's like Jesus. That's interesting, isn't it? But hold up. Listen to what it says. It has a voice like a dragon. It might look like a lamb. It might wear a robe and a clerical collar. It might even wear a cross. But if what comes out of its mouth is words from the dragon, it's part of this. And Jesus said that would exist throughout this entire church age. So, it says He exercised all the authority of the first beast. It's amazing how much authority, if you look throughout history, how much authority some religious leaders have had. And how they worked together with the state to persecute God's people. It happened in Germany, for sure. That's why, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was leaving, but then he wanted to go back for his own people. But the church and the state were working together. I mean, basically the church had embraced Hitler's fascism. Last thing we want to do is upset anything, and we don't lose our tax-exempt status for heaven's sake. You know what I mean? Anyway. He required all the earth and its people to worship the first beast whose fatal wound had been healed. We talked about all that last week. He did astounding miracles, even making fire flash down from earth so everybody could see. What's he saying there is sometimes people can get caught up in the drama of miracles and healings and healing revivals and all kinds of things. And sometimes, a lot of times, some of these preachers are exposed for everything from microphones in their ears, everything. I want to tell you the sign of a false prophet. I love this in a William Barclay book from an early church documents. This is how they labeled false prophets in the earliest times of the church. If they're talking about money. When they're talking about money, they're a false prophet. I want you to know today, you'd have a hard time watching any Christian television in America. And if you had to apply that principle. In fact, I think Christian television, if I could be so bold, should I, Doug? I think It's another example of something that started out as a good thing to help some people who maybe couldn't make it to church or this, that, and the other. But man, look at what it turned into. And every week, I get ministry updates all the time. Every week. You wouldn't believe it. Every week there's another one of them that falls or is exposed or whatever. You know, this one you was telling me, I think you were telling me about that a week or so ago, about he got all of his jewelry stolen, like $1 million worth of rings and diamond rings and this, that, and the other. You know what I say? Good. But anyway, imagine that. Jesus said, imagine Jesus, remember the Ray, I'm going to get off track here, and I want to try to finish this part tonight, but remember Ray Stevens' song Would Jesus Wear a Rolex on his television show? Anybody ever hear that one? That was good. Ray Stevens is always on target. The prophet Ray Stevens. Never misses.
He had a song about the Presbyterian.
Oh, I never heard that one.
He said how you could tell a Presbyterian because they're sewing it up on the roof or something like that.
Okay.
That was him.
That was him. Well, I did in Colorado one time for a show. We actually did the Mississippi Squirrel Revival. I had a friend, he was a retired colonel from the Air Force, and we would and he played banjo, so we did the Mississippi Squirrel Revival. Had some fun with that. Anyway, let's see. So what do signs prove? Nothing. A sign proves nothing. What the person teaches is what matters. Amen, anybody? You better listen to in fact, he says that, and you want to read a neat little passage. Read Deuteronomy chapter 13, the beginning of it, where he says if a prophet comes and he does all this stuff, and he does these works, and he does all these amazing things, he makes these pretty and everything, then if he tells you to follow other gods, he's a false prophet. In other words, he's saying that, and you know what it says in that passage? I shuddered to say it, but I might as well, because, you know, I'm getting older, so I don't know how many sermons I have left, so let me just lay it all out there, right? In that passage, I challenge you to go home and read it tonight. It says, the Lord your God is testing you to see if you will love Him or if you'll follow after these flashy things. How many times would we fail that test in the modern church in America? Because if it ain't glittering and if it ain't flashy, we don't want anything to do with it. But the Lord tests us. Another little basic part of Christianity that we've forgotten in the 21st century, but the Lord tests us. Amen? And our love, to see if we love Him. Okay. Sorry about that. Well, I mean, it does actually. I'm not sorry about that, because it actually goes right along with this. Why does God allow? I mean, that's a fair question. Why would God allow this kind of thing to continue? See, it's not only the world that needs to know about our testimony. You know, whether it's the government that comes against me, or whether it's all kinds of crazy woke ideas or whatever that comes against me, I need to know also whether I am in the faith. How will I ever know what is really inside of me if I am not, if I don't have these pressures around me? You ever thought about that? It's a gift of God to us. Because what it should do for us is confirm us and establish us in the faith. See, because the reality is, the book of Revelation tells us that powers that be on earth, people in positions of authority, will oppress the people of God, and there will always be philosophies and false religion that will attack us, but God's going to keep His people. But we don't know that until we come up to the pressure of it. We don't even know what's really inside of us until we've been tested. Think about Abraham, the father of our faith. Now, he's waited a long time to get Isaac, hasn't he? And now what? Take him up. It says in, I think, Genesis 21, the Lord said now, that the scripture says, and then the Lord tested Abraham. That's true. He doesn't tempt us with evil, but He does test our faith. So we need to know, and this helps us to know whether we are truly in the faith. And when we are confirmed in it, and we learn to recognize these things, and we're given these choices, and we feel we're empowered to make the right choice, that confirms us in our faith. Well, it says He ordered the people to make a great staff. He works together with the government authorities that oppress God's people. He was permitted to give life to the statue so that it could speak. And the statue of the beast, and commanded that anyone refusing to worship the beast must die. Again, remember, we're dealing primarily with symbolism here. Okay, so what is the symbol behind that? And that's what we want to get to as we look at this. And of course, nobody's exempt. He required everyone, small and rich, poor or free, and slave, to be given a mark on the right hand or on the forehead. No one could buy or sell anything without the mark, which was either the name or the number representing his name. Again, listen to this. Wisdom is needed here. Let the one with understanding solve the meaning of the number of the beast. It's the number of a man. It's the number of man. The number is 666. Well, we'll get to that a little more later as we come down through here. This beast appears harmless, but is very dangerous. And as the text there says, it calls for wisdom on the part of the church. So the two beasts work hand in hand, causing both anti-Christian government and anti-Christian religion to conspire against Christ and His people. It's the church, the true Israel of God. Now, this beast is religious, not political in the sense of governmental leadership. Think about that. Remember when we looked at the two witnesses, and we looked at how John was told to mark off the sanctuary, and we considered that the temple complex was very large, but yet the true sanctuary was just a small part inside when you think about the temple, right? And what he was saying there was the sanctuary I'm keeping for my own, but the outer court, let the Gentiles, let the unbelievers trample it. You think of the church organization as a whole for 2,000 years, as large as it's been, most of that has consisted of people with philosophy mixed in with a little bit of Christianity, and very few of them, in the great scheme of things, were ever even born again. They were religious, they followed philosophy, but they did not and were not interested in knowing Christ, the Christ of the Bible. It's a scary thought, but it's a reality. One effective tactic that the dragon uses is that first beast, that raw persecution. We see that throughout the world. But you know, it's not hard to miss that, is it? I mean, when somebody is coming and saying, you either say Caesar is Lord or we're going to kill you, it's not hard to figure out that this person doesn't like me. And, you know, but this false prophet, that's why he calls for patience and for endurance when dealing with the first beast. But this beast, this false prophet, he calls for wisdom. Matthew 7:15 said false prophets would look like a lamb, but there's something else on the inside. 2 Corinthians 11:14, Paul the Apostle. This is an interesting passage. Probably should turn to it for a moment. 2 Corinthians chapter 11. I thought it was going to be real short tonight because I say that every time, don't I? I really did this time. 2 Corinthians chapter 11. You have to see this because you see this in Paul's own day. Okay? You talk about eye-opening. I think it really is. Let me begin. I'll begin with verse number 12, chapter 11. He says, I'll continue doing what I've always done. This will undercut those who are looking for an opportunity to boast that their work is just like ours. Because there's all kinds of people in the ministry already in Paul's day. They're running around doing all kinds of stuff. But listen to what Paul says about them. These people are false apostles. Now that's eye-opening, isn't it? He says they are deceitful workers who disguise themselves as apostles of Christ. He said, but I'm not surprised. Listen to this. Even Satan himself disguises himself as an angel of light. So it's no wonder that his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. In the end, they'll get the punishment their wicked deeds deserve. So even in Paul's day, it's already rampant. That's just one of many passages that we can give you. The devil, this tactic of the devil is not in your face. This tactic of the devil ends up taking on the disguise of sometimes your favorite preacher before you realize. You know, people have come, some preachers have come out, more than one within the last few years, saying, you know, I don't even believe. I was just doing it. It worked, and I got rich, and it worked. Christian singers, a lot of Christian singers, modern contemporary Christian music that goes through Nashville. You'd be surprised how many of them get drunk or high or whatever before they even hit the stage. It would blow your mind. It would blow your mind. We need wisdom. See, the thing is, if you're drinking water and somebody's giving you some water, you got to make sure the cup they're giving it to you in's clean before you drink it. Because it's hard to get something clean from a dirty vessel. All right. Many people today belong to Antichrist denominations. This is really becoming apparent. I don't even... I guess it requires wisdom. Maybe... Isn't it odd that some of what the major denominations are embracing today, that the people of those churches just aren't having an uproar? Now, I will grant you this. Many of the major denominations that's already embraced same-sex marriage and a lot of this stuff are losing membership like crazy. Some of them don't care because they're sitting on so much money, they just don't care. And their gospel has become a gospel of wokeness and this kind of stuff. It is this false message. Well, when we read these texts like this, you could just say, Lord, what in the world's going on? But when you read a text like this, you say, well, you know what? I'm not alarmed by this because he said it was going to be like this. That the dragon would use another beast throughout this whole time. Interesting, isn't it? Many modern churches are feeding troughs for dragons. That's what they are. See, just because the state comes around and says, oh, you can marry same-sex people, does not change the Bible. We don't get our authority to do what God has commanded from the state, right? But can you see there how the dragon uses the two beasts in harmony? He uses the authority of the state to pollute with a philosophy that's false doctrine. Why in the world the church ever submitted to letting the state be the authority for doing marriage anyway? Marriage is a religious right. You know, it's amazing they didn't ask to have the authority to give communion and baptism also 100 years ago when that happened. That's only like 100, 110 years old, the whole state given the authority to do marriage. But boy, once it was gone, but here's what it boiled down to. We wanted that tax-exempt status, so we've got to play the game with the state. And then when you do that, you always lose your voice for truth. It's hard to serve God and mammon. Somebody said that, real famous. And they were always right, everything they said. That was Jesus. Amen? So we don't get the authority from the state, whatever it is. False prophets perform unbiblical rites approved by the government, forbidden by God. The mark of the beast is 666. The false prophet spiritually marks each individual who belongs to him. The dragon does. Now we already saw more than once in this book that the people of God are marked. Does anybody remember what the mark on the people of God is? The seal of the Lamb. Now, I've said this to you before. I know you're marked. I'm looking at a crowd of people that are marked with the seal of the Lamb, but I don't see a visible seal on your forehead. But somehow we've been led to believe that the mark of the beast is only some stamp that will be in the very end of time. No, what he's saying is there's two ways of life. If you follow after the dragon and the beast, you're marked. And he knows it. And you're marked in your head, your philosophy, your way of living, you're marked. You think the way that the dragon thinks. You're marked in your hand. Your relationships, your work, and everything that's represented by your hand will be reflected in your entire life. That is a simple spiritual meaning of the mark of the beast. The church receives the seal of the living God. It's not visible like a tattoo, but it's real. God knows who is His. And you know what? The devil knows when you're God's too, because you're marked. You're marked. What is 6? Well, now so far in this book, we've seen that all these numbers have spiritual meanings behind them. We know that the number 7 represents fullness. Normally speaking about God, His fullness, His perfection, His holiness, and there are some scripture references that you can look at. 6 is the number of man. What day was man created on? Does anybody remember? Yeah, the 6th day. The 7th day was God's day, the day of rest. Man never quite made it to God's rest. He was created on the 6th day, and 7 is fullness. 6 falls short of this and is therefore imperfect, incomplete, and defective. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Well, the serpent, if you remember the original temptation in the garden, that temptation was, you shall be as God. Isn't that interesting that the devil didn't say to Adam and Eve, eat of this tree and you'll be like me? No, you will be as God. See? It's always reaching for something that does not belong to us, a glory that doesn't belong to us. Genesis 3:6, 3 times, which is a mockery of the Trinity. 666 is the symbol of eternal failure. Man has missed the mark and he cannot reach God's rest. You know what God's rest is? The seventh day. In Hebrews it says we've entered into that rest. God's rest is when we've ceased from trying to earn our salvation, cease from trying to be our own Savior, cease from looking to ourselves or to our fellow man as our Savior, as the end, and we look to God. And it's only when we rest in the finished work of Christ that we enter into God's rest. All legalism, all rules, regulated Christianity falls under the mark of the beast. It's only when we rest in what Christ has done and are sealed by His Spirit that we enter into that rest. 666 is humanism. It's total self-centeredness. It is the man who loves himself more than anything else. So it is the number of man. Now, the word beast, incidentally, in the Greek calculates to 666. And of course, there's the name of Jesus calculates to 888. So that's kind of an interesting, in the Greek. So we are indeed marked in the spiritual. Being marked is, I like how Hendrickson refers to that in the last part of the chapter, that they're not allowed to buy or sell as long as they remain loyal to their principles. That's what being marked with the beast is. As we approach the end of this, he says this opposition will increase. Nevertheless, let not the believer despair. Let him remember that the number of the beast is the number of man. Now man was created on the sixth day. 6 moreover is not 7 and never reaches 7. It always fails to attain perfection. That is, it never becomes 7. 6 means missing the mark or failure. 7 means perfection or victory. He says, rejoice, O church of God. The victory is on your side. The number of the beast is 666. That is failure upon failure upon failure. It's the number of man. For the beast glories in man and must fail. It's so easy for us to be pulled into that, always looking for some man or mankind to solve our problems. Sometimes ourselves. You know, when you're looking to yourself to solve the problem, you're still looking to man. Well, we are marked. And I mentioned the right hand and the forehead representing thinking and doing, and the philosophies of man that put self at the center, and the friendships and the deals and the work. It will affect your work. It will affect your buying and selling. How many good Christian men and women have been denied or just pushed away from a promotion or something because they didn't want that person in the position? Because when we go away to these parties or we do whatever else, we don't want a religious fuddy-duddy that's going to tell our wives or whatever what we're doing on these business trips. And we don't want somebody, when we're sliding money from here and money to there and we're doing this kind of stuff, we don't want somebody with too clean morals in a position that might expose some of that. It does affect your buying and selling. And the only thing that overcomes it, that the believer clings to, is one thing: the favor of God. When God puts His favor on you, you will go from the prison to right beside the Pharaoh in Egypt like Joseph. But only the favor of God does it. And that should be the only thing that we're looking to. Promotion does not come from the east or the west. It comes from the Lord. But how often do we get sucked up into the way of the world, the way of the thinking of the beast, that we've got to do this and we've got to do that, and we've got to operate like these people, and in order to get ours, I mean, after all, God would want me to have that promotion. Right? Not if it means selling out your integrity. Not if it means being marked as something that you're not. Does that make any sense? Okay, so those who receive the mark of the beast belong to an army who persecute the church with both mind and action. Golly, you can see it so clearly in our culture today. That philosophy that literally hates conservative Christianity. And it just oozes from some of these people. They gleefully put down Christianity. You see it in our media. And of course, there used to be such a thing as comedy, but now it's not even funny. Has anybody ever noticed that lately in the last 10 or 15 years? It's not even funny. It's either totally vulgar, and you're like, this, and it's not even funny, or they love to make fun of Jesus, and terrible things, but they won't do it to others. Well, these beasts work hand in hand, and the two worked hand in hand to kill Jesus. It was the religious leaders of his day that resisted him when he came. He came to his own, and his own received him not. They worked hand in hand with the government leaders to plot and to kill Jesus. What is that? That's the first beast and the second beast working together, and you can see it throughout history. The Sanhedrin partnered with Pilate to murder Jesus. And then consider what they call in history the Holy Roman Empire, when the Pope and the Caesars worked together. You know where Protestantism was really birthed? A man who was a faithful monk named Martin Luther, taking a trip from Germany through the lands and collecting offerings from the peasants who had hardly nothing to eat. I don't know, 800 miles, 1,000 miles, whatever, on foot, and collecting this off to take to Rome. And when he got to Rome, he is a faithful monk. Okay? This is not a guy with a chip on his shoulder. This is a faithful Catholic monk. Okay? I mean, when they told Martin Luther, you need to pray an hour on your bare knees on the hard rock, he'd pray 3 or 4 hours. When they told him you need to be outside with no clothes on in the snow, because they were really into works righteousness, you had to kind of earn your righteousness, right? You pray outside for an hour in the snow naked, because the flesh has got to suffer. He would spend the entire night outside in the snow naked. So this is a guy who is committed, right? He got to Rome, he was sickened at the lack of spirituality out of the Pope, at the riches of the Pope, as he's collecting these offerings from these peasants that don't even have a meal to eat. And they're telling them, you got to give this coin or your so-and-so that died will be in purgatory for the next 1,200 years. And if you want to see him get out. I mean, on and on and on. I mean, I'm not bashing. I'm just giving you history, right? Well, by the time he got back to Germany, that's where the 95 Theses, that 95 basically complaints against the Catholic Church that he nails to the chapel. We would say Wittenberg, Germany. Americans would say Wittenberg. Okay, I'm an American too. You English people would say Wittenberg, but okay. Anyway, nails the 95. Hey, you know what? Martin Luther literally spent a lot of his life and hiding because the Pope wanted him dead, and they were trying to kill him because they brought him before, wanted him to recant everything. He said, If you're going to kill me, you're going to kill me. But here I stand. I'm going to stand for the truth. By then, I believe it's this part in the story, he had already received the revelation that you can't earn your righteousness by doing these things. That the righteous the just are made, or you're made righteous by your faith. See? But literally had to be hit. He had to hide out and everything. They had to. Now think of the Pope has a death sentence on his head because he won't recant. That's not. You can see where religion, even so-called Christianity, can become something that's not of God. You see how that false prophet, that spirit of the false prophet, that spirit of that second beast can get inside religion and all the religions of the world that lead people astray. So much of European history shows the same sad story. So here's our call to stand against Satan as he comes to us and against us, whether it be through the government or those in power, or through false religion, false philosophy. Because all false philosophy really is all philosophy that's in error is really false religion. It's all false religion. It's all pointing away from God. Whether it's woke stuff, whether it's transgender stuff, whatever it is, whether it's toxic masculinity, whatever it is. You know what toxic masculinity really is, right? Act on masculinity is an attack on God the Father. That's what it boils down to. That the authority figure of all time and of the entire universe is God the Father. So we've got to tear that down. See, it's not about men. It's an attack against God the Father. All false philosophy, whichever form you find it in, what I'm saying, always can come back to, and you can find that aspect in it that attacks God. So it's a call to stand against Satan's hand and Satan's head. Satan's hand comes against us in force with the persecution to get us to deny, like we saw so much in the early church, saw that a lot in Rome. But at the same time, there was also all the philosophies that would draw you away from Christ that was going on at the same time. We're called to just be aware and to pay attention. It would be great if we were just in this life to have a good time, but it's not the reality. The reality is we're called to be aware, to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. But we need that wisdom. And now, let's face the facts now. I mean, you used to be able to turn the television on and, you might late at night there would be something that was a little bit off color. But now, every advertisement, well, I won't say every advertisement, but in the everything. I've seen more men kissing in advertisements the last year. What is that? That is somebody pushing an agenda. Now, so then whoever calls on the name of the Lord will be saved.